We are live, everybody. Welcome to a very, very special live stream. We have Alexander Mercouris in London. We have the one and only Gonzalo Lira in Kharkov. And we are very, very honored to have Andrei Martyanov with us, joining us today on this live stream. We have been wanting to get Andrei on the show for a while now. We are all big fans of his work. And we are all very, very excited to listen to what he has to say. Of course, we are going to talk about what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in Russia, what's going on with Nato, the United States, the EU, the collective West, all of it. We're going to have a great conversation. So first, let me welcome everybody who is watching us on Rumble, who's watching us on Odyssey, who is watching us on YouTube, and of course, our great locals community, the Duran.locals.com. And thank you to our moderators who are in the chat. Let me just give a quick shout out to our moderators. I saw Zariel was in the house. Who else is with us, Zariel? Who else is moderating or helping you out in the chat? Let me see here. Zariel, are you all alone? I think Zariel is the only one moderating. There'll be more moderators joining us. Yeah. So the first thing I want to say before we get started, I am going to pass it off to Alexander in about a minute, so Alexander can get the conversation moving. I just want to say that we have links to Gonzalo Lira's official Twitter account. It is in the description box down below. And we have a link to Gonzalo Lira's official, brand new, and second YouTube account. So please subscribe to Gonzalo Lira on Twitter. Please subscribe to Gonzalo Lira on his new YouTube account. Gonzalo has already put up a good 4 or 5 excellent videos. And please keep in mind that the official channels to follow Gonzalo are going to be announced on his Twitter. There are a lot of channels which are fakes. Do not follow those. Follow his Twitter, subscribe to his YouTube. And we have the links to Andrei's fantastic blog. I read it every single day. It is a must read. Those links are in the description box down below. And please, everybody, subscribe to Andrei's incredible YouTube channel. It is also a must-see and a must-watch. I'm a big fan of his YouTube shows. Alexander is a big fan of Andrei's YouTube shows. Yeah. We're very, very happy to have you with us, Andrei.
Pleasure to be here with you guys.
Thank you very much, Andrei. I am going to now be quiet. I am going to listen with excitement along with everybody else. I'm going to be in the chat as well, talking to everybody in the various chats. Alexander, the floor is yours.
Indeed. And can I just also say it's a huge privilege to have Andrei on this program. I'm also a huge fan. I always follow his blogs. I always listen to his videos. And I also read his analysis. And you can find his analysis in books that he's written, books about the real military revolution. His understanding of war is profound. His understanding of politics and of political decision-making is profound. And of course, one of the things about Andrei is that he has obviously the background of being in the Soviet military, understanding Russian military affairs, but he's also got that perception of being able to see what the West does, what decision-making is like in the United States. I'm also going to just add one other thing, which is, of course, that Andrei understands to a degree that I see very few other commentators understand, the interconnection between technology and war and the change brought about to war by technology. And if Andrei will forgive me, I'm just going to mention one little event that I remember from my early childhood. Not one that I'm not somebody who has much background in military affairs, but I remember that I think it was in 1968, there was an Israeli frigate that was destroyed in a Israeli harbor by an Egyptian missile boat. I think it was the first time that anti-ship missiles were used successfully in war. It was a Soviet era, Soviet missile boat that was used. And in fact, if we're talking about anti-ship missiles, if we're talking about missile technologies, if we're talking about hypersonics, all of those things, it's absolutely clear to me that the Russians have been the great trendsetters in this type of war. We've seen how important it's been in the war that's been fought in Ukraine now, And of course, this is exactly the background that Andrei most understands better than anybody else. And he explains it brilliantly in his various discussions, analyses, and in his books. So I would highly recommend his books to people who want to understand how war is fought and how war is operated today. So, Andrei, I'm going to ask straight away a few questions. I'm going to go straight away into the kind of questions that I would be very, very interested in your views about. Now, I'm going to discuss briefly, I think, my perception, not so much of the Russian military things and of the Russian political things, but of the extraordinary chaotic decision making that we are seeing in the West. The West doesn't seem to me to have much understanding of anything that's going on. They're improvising, they're making decisions from one day to the next. They have no real plan, no real structure, no real conception of how this particular war is being fought. Is that your view as well? Because, as I said, it seems to me a very chaotic series of responses to a situation that is completely outside their own understanding.
Well, thank you for such an introduction. I'm really humbled. Oh, man. Thank you, Alexander. First, it's not perception. It's actually the reality. And you read my books, you read my blog, and for many years, and even before that, while I was just basically lurking in the background, just in some blog here and there, and I wrote articles, here and there, was the fact that it was forecasted, predicted, basically, from the get-go that the West not only doesn't have any plan, except for the general direction. And we know now this general direction because it's been completely, disclosed and manifestly exhibited, so to speak. It's the Russophobia into the extreme, and they had this direction. But in terms of tools, in terms of how they approach it, and in terms of developing the policies, and by the policy, I mean not some collection of slogans, and PR action. I'm talking about the policy which engages, people and provides some, sensible measures. There never was there anything like this. I mean, there was this moment of glory for the United States and combined West, early 90s, with the collapse of the Soviet Union. And of course, this basically beating the, pardon my French, the excrement from out of the third-rate Arab army, by Saddam Hussein, which gave the reasons for some reason to declare the coming of the New World Order. And, from there, it was this, oh my gosh, unipolar moment, what many people didn't recognize even then. And among this triumphalism is that even in the disassembled and decaying state of 1990s, the rump of the Soviet Union, Russian Federation, still could wipe the United States off the map in nuclear way. And there was and the victory, so to speak, in the Cold War was not really a victory. This Russians, our stupidity, I'm such a way, goodwill, suddenly, hey, no more threat of nuclear war, let's be friends and all that. And even Pat Buchanan wrote, that the Russian, hand extended with friendship was slapped away. There you go. And people in the combined West, and it was decaying really fast. And now it's precipitous decay of the Western political elites. They don't even know subject. They don't understand war. They don't understand Russia. They don't understand economy, real economy. They don't understand how it works. And as a result, you see this chaotic, knee-jerk reactions. And when you look at even, for example, Annalena Baerbock, the foreign minister of Germany, she has zero background in anything. Nobody actually knows what's her education, for starters. Or you have this guy, Olaf Scholz, who is just basically political operative, who never worked a day of real work, in his life. And there you go. That's what you get.
Yeah.
I think also, hey, Andrei, it's great to have you on. It's a real pleasure. Yeah. And what I wanted to follow up on that issue is that, see, the leadership classes in the West, In 1991, the people who were in charge had a great deal of experience. I mean, think of George Herbert Walker Bush, the greatest foreign policy presidents the United States had. He had a wealth of foreign policy experience.
James Baker.
Exactly.
James Baker, outstanding Secretary of the State.
Exactly. People with enormous experience, people who had been, young men during the Second World War. They knew what they were doing. But what happened was that with the Clinton administration and moving forward, the people were academics fundamentally, people who came up through the ranks, not of experience, but rather of accreditation. And it seems to me that so much of the accreditation process rewarded people for qualities that were not necessarily useful in the real world. And so you have people like, for instance, Jake Sullivan. He is a creature of academia and NGOs. He has no real world experience whatsoever. And yet he is the national security advisor. He is a fool. And I don't think that anybody here disputes that. But he has risen to this position of power because of malincentives in the West system of bringing in new blood to leadership positions. And so my concern is not that we have incompetent leaders now. It's that when the incompetence of these leaders is clearly revealed to everyone, we are not going to have anybody else that we can replace them with. We're going to have equally incompetent people because the subsequent generations, the generations that are coming behind them, have gone through the same process of empty accreditation with no real world experience. And most important of all that I've noticed, an inability to empathize with the point of view of the other. That's my thinking.
Well, for starters, we have to make a very important distinction here. Current academy, so to speak, in the West, it's really a catastrophe. It's not good, okay? Especially in the field which we call liberal arts and humanities. We suddenly have people who are absolutely not good academically. Just to demonstrate, Gonzalo, what you and illustrate, very correct thing stated. Compare, for example, former US ambassador to Soviet Union and partially in Russia, very early stages, esteemed Jack Matlock, who was and is an outstanding Russian scholar with perfect command of Russian language. Mr. Matlock knows Yevgeny Onegin by Pushkin, a huge poem. It's actually novel in rhyme, and he knows it by heart. Very few Russians do that. And guess what? And then compared to this,
I don't think McFall knows any of that.
Yeah, Mr. McFall, he barely can speak Russian. He is literally a clown who wrote. I remember his thesis, graduate thesis, was something about the operations of the KGB, or in Central America. What good does it do to you, into providing the actual requirements and actual qualifications to deal with the diplomatic issues between actually two nuclear superpowers? Yet this guy ended up in Moscow being the ambassador, and he was embarrassing the United States left and right. He continues to embarrass it today. And now when you look at the current State Department, goodness gracious, it's just, and there you go. They're not good. They're not academically. And part of it, obviously, yes, I am on record. Russia study field in the West, in the combined West, for the last 20, more than 20, really, it already wasn't the Cold War. This whole Russia field was always a wasteland. It was the narrative creation, nothing to do with the actual research. And hence, that is why people still consider Solzhenitsyn, for example, a great writer. They didn't read him in Russian. He's unreadable pretty much, but they don't understand. They think, for example, that Gulag Archipelago is the documentary. It's not. It's a fictional literature, and that's how it is actually published. It's written there in the book. In the title, it is written that experience into literary investigation. That means the guy basically created fiction. The reality of this was never revealed. And again, I always refer to this wonderful book by Whitman Basso. He was the United Press International Moscow correspondent for many years, since 50s through 1980s, through perestroika and collapse of the Soviet Union. It's a wonderful book, Moscow Correspondent. It already gives some insight in how everything positive, everything interesting about Russia has been blocked. And there is he describes the moment when he was sitting in the Metropole Hotel in Moscow, and he encountered an American couple from Texas who were complaining to him that, why don't you write that Russians actually dress nicely and that Moscow is such a nice city, and that, he said, why should we report that Russians can wear shoes and wear, fur coats? Because if I write this, they will not allow it.
Yeah. I'm going to quickly say, when I first went to Moscow, I was extraordinarily surprised at the city. It was not at all like I'd been led to believe by the media. But anyway, can I just move on to a few more things? I mean, I'm not a military person at all. I've never been involved in military affairs. I have some understanding of logistics because I did have a background once upon a time in logistics. And when I said at the start of the program that this is a chaotic and completely misunderstood approach that the West has, I've been looking at the types of weapons that are being sent by the West. And we have bits and bobs of weapons from one country. So Poland is sending T-72s. France is sending some kind of, tank, self-propelled missiles. Others are sending, whatever they consider, that they want to cast off and get rid of. It's going to be an incredible hodgepodge of weapons that are being sent to Ukraine. I can't see any kind of military logic, and indeed any kind of logistical logic behind all of this. And yet we're here in the West now that there is a plan. Liz Truss has talked about it. Annalena Baerbock has talked about it, to rearm Ukraine with all of this and to go on the offensive and to win all the territories that Ukraine has lost, to win them back, including Crimea, by the way, and Donbass, and who knows what else. Am I being accurate in saying that this is absolutely not the way to achieve such a fantastic and unrealistic project, that putting this cobbling together this bizarre mess of systems, none of which seem to be compatible with each other, is not the way to do that in any conceivable way? It's just throwing weapon systems at a problem without devising any kind of realistic plan or idea or sustainable plan of how to keep these things in operation.
Well, what can I say? And again, it's a well-known fact, and I am on the record again for many years. Western elites, political elites, decision makers, including some military, not all, some military people, they have no clue about modern warfare whatsoever. They are stuck in this first Gulf War, Desert Storm paradigm, because they think that they can take third-rate monkey Soviet models Arab army and you can fight it. And now, of course, it is aggravated and exacerbated by the fact that of this total military humiliation in Afghanistan, and it's not even the level of what we saw, dramatic, famous photos from Saigon in 1975, but which wasn't really military defeat at that point. The United States Army was out of Vietnam by that time for more than 2 years. It was the southern Vietnam which had been overrun by North, and obviously there's, dramatic photos, they signify this defeat, but it wasn't like that. In Afghanistan, you literally have U.S. Army running, leaving their billions in the equipment and just disappearing in the, in the night within 48 hours. This is a humiliation. So we have this political, military, and incompetence exacerbated by the hysteria, and they will be throwing all this. You are absolutely correct, Alexander. Hodgepodge assembly or collection of the weapons, which are absolutely useless, because the warfare which is being conducted and the way it was planned by Russia is nothing they ever experienced before. And for starters, one of the major things which I constantly emphasize, no Western military person ever fought under conditions when the rear services, headquarters, munition depots, and basically what is called the operational and strategic depths are absolutely not safe. They will be attacked in the real war, in real conventional war. They will be destroyed. Their command and control system will be decapitated, basically. And that's what West now learning about it. So in this case, for example, and of course, we can only surmise or assess things based on the really very limited information which is being trickled. Most of it is propaganda anyway. But from what we can gather, for example, javelins are extremely useless, in this real war. And British NLAWs, yeah, they are good on the flanks when you have the column, and you have the ambushes, along the way. But look at the Stingers. This is a dismal performance. There were like tens of thousands of them right now there. And guess what? Russian aviation still flies and still, does the job. And that's the whole thing. I think so. They're really experiencing right now shock and awe. And basically, it's about the moment which Leo Tolstoy, wrote in his famous War and Peace when describing the state of Napoleon on the Borodino battlefield, which, by the way, saw the highest slaughter in history by that time between the two armies. Around 1,000 people have been killed in 8 hours in this battle. And that Napoleon, like in the dream, he had this issue of the soft hand. He saw there, some scoundrel approaching him and willing to fight him and deal a serious blow, but his hand was soft and falling absolutely powerless, as it is usually in the dream. This is exactly what it is. They just throw those weapons, they will be annihilated. They will be annihilated. Those which will get to the battlefield, they will be annihilated. But the bulk of them is being annihilated as I talk to you right now. Just yesterday, near Odessa, yet another delivery of the military cargos, some Stingers, some whatever you have it, and have been annihilated. Russians didn't even use the calibers. They used the Onyx P-800 missiles shot from Crimea. Salvo of missiles is done. One of the military airstrips is done, and the storage facilities are done. Now they are worrying about this tunnel, the only big tunnel which is capable to allowed to through up to 100 large trains a day. It's in the Carpathian Mountains. They pull there, whatever they have, the air defense resources, because Russian forces already basically cut out the supply lines pretty much, especially by destroying the power station, which provide the power up, the thrust for the electrical trains. So Russia can crush this tunnel. They will not for now, but if need be, they will crush this tunnel, and then it just will, be reduced to the trickle down on the roads. That's about it, and that's what is happening.
Andrei, I wanted to ask you, could you give us an overview after we're approximately 60 days, I believe, into this war? 65 days. Yeah, I wanted to ask you, where is the state of play at this moment? Can you give us like a basically where we are at, and for the audience, especially for a lot of people who are tuning in and who might not be on the same page, who is winning, and how do you know that this side or the other is winning? By what metric? Because of course in the West, all the propaganda is the Ukrainians are winning. They're going to be at the doors of Moscow any day now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Moscow is bullshit. And so I want you to give us who is winning and why you know that this side or the other is winning.
Well, we have to understand that for the layman, the perception of war is basically formed by in the West, it's formed by the Hollywood. They see all those, movies about the war, and they think, oh, okay, that's how you win. Well, in reality, there is a reason why, for example, United States doesn't award the degrees in the, for example, military science. I think so. British, they do award this degree in military science, but in military science, for example, I have 2 degrees. I have a graduate degree in the naval engineering, and I have the bachelor's degree, equivalent of the bachelor's degree in the military science. Well, a real war, especially modern war, is not fought like they think. Oh yeah, let's pull some, missile or some, system and shoot at the enemy. Doesn't work like this. So for those people who would say that, when was the war, kind of decided? I can tell you immediately, in the first 2 weeks. Because in the first 2 weeks, basically the all VSU, armed forces of Ukraine, have been denied mobility. Simple as that. And once you have been denied mobility, then you begin to basically demolish what is called C4 ISR.
Excuse me. Please explain to the audience, what do you mean by denying mobility?
Basically, they, and I think so that was the plan, Pentagon, CIA, and UK Defense Ministry, they definitely helped develop this thing. And there are still some competent people obviously left there, although I think their number is decreasing, honestly, from what I observe. But they knew that basically in the long run, they cannot really sustain whatever, Russia will throw at them. And the fundamental idea was, especially in the eastern Ukraine, which is Donbass grouping of the VSU, which is the main strike force, which was assembled for the assault on the LDNR in March, which was forestalled on the February 24 by Russian forces. It was the fact that if you look at the map there, it is basically one huge, not city, but let's say city and town. It's one huge urban or suburban zone. You have literally gaps between the villages and or some towns, which are 2 kilometers, 2.5 kilometers. So it's one huge, basically reinforced area, Festung, as the Germans would call them during the Operation Bagration, when they were bypassed. Russians decided not really to bypass that, especially considering the fact that Russian forces are outnumbered by the factor of 3, 1 to 3. The Ukrainians are more numerous. But the idea was to, from the American and probably British and other NATO side, was to, okay, you can go into those reinforced areas, most of them in the civilian, within civilian infrastructure. And you can use them as your fortress. Some of it is real fortress, concrete structures, which you cannot even break with a 152 millimeter shell. And it's all among the civilian infrastructure, houses, kindergartens, music schools, what have you. And that was the idea. They will cut out your lines of communications. They will make traveling of the armor and any kind of logistic transport, dangerous. So just go there, sit there and fight. That will slow down, Russian advance and things of this nature. So, and basically Russians knew that. And what happened, you have literally by now it's probably less than 100,000. I'm sure it's much less than 100,000. But initial estimates of this Ukrainian grouping was up to 100,000. And it is now literally sits inside the place and cannot really move anywhere. It's literally cannot move anywhere because first, a lot of automobile transport have been destroyed. A lot of armor, huge number of armor was destroyed. So how do you go about it? Well, you can obviously use, so to speak, civilian cars or civilian trucks, those which are remaining there. But how good will it do to you if you need, for example, to move brigade? I can tell you what real brigade on the move is. It's many kilometers of armor and transport, and it's a huge logistic operation. What does it mean if they do that? Well, there is Russian aviation there and Russian standoff precision weapons. You're not going to get far. And they already learned it the hard way. So in the first 2 weeks, basically, this was basically, denied. And so what you have now is you have this grinding, storming of those festungs or small or large fortresses and mopping up. But they cannot move anywhere. They cannot. So that's just the way it is. And the moment this happened, it was clear that, yeah, now it's just a matter of time and the mode, so to speak, how Russian general staff will decide to go about it, And I believe Scott Ritter yesterday written, although I do not agree with everything Scott says, but I respect him tremendously, But he wrote on RT, I believe, yesterday, the wonderful article that, yeah, for now, VSU is winning mostly on Twitter. In reality, on the ground, they're sustaining now catastrophic losses.
Yeah.
And the amount of prisoners of war is growing drastically. And they are shocked, basically. They are shocked people. Some of them, they say there are some units, some actually regiment size or brigade size units, which don't have command anymore. It was either killed or it simply ran away. So, and the only reason they many still do not surrender is because they have basically these punitive detachments by the Nazis who do not allow to surrender. They will shoot you in the back. You have about one Nazi, and usually fanatical Nazis, per 10 VSU servicemen. So it's, there you go.
By the way, we've been talking about this war, Alex, Alexander, myself, also with Scott, and it seems that the consensus is emerging as to that Russia had an original game plan, and that original game plan failed, and then it's gone to this grinding war. And the consensus we have is that the original game plan was to come in strong from multiple angles, multiple axes of attack, and essentially try to intimidate and scare the Zelensky regime into a negotiation of neutrality, no NATO, a sort of demilitarization, a clear respect that Crimea is always going to be Russian, and also the Donetsk and Lugansk being allowed to be separate enclaves, and that original position failed because the Ukrainians refused to negotiate in good faith. And so the Russians in late March and into early April came to the decision that, okay, this is a real war, so let's just grind it out and get a victory, not merely a political victory, but an actual conquest of terrain. And to me, at least, the signal seemed to be in early, I do believe it was early April, that once they had captured Kherson, they stated that they would transition to the ruble. And that, to me, signaled that Russia intended to outright conquer this territory, or if you want to put it more politely, maintain a permanent presence. Let's call a spade a spade. They intended to conquer all of the south band of Ukraine and the eastern band, and that decision was made in late March, early April, because of the failure of the first phase that was trying to reach a political solution. Do you think that this model of thinking about Russia's intention is accurate? Or if it's not accurate, where do you think it's inaccurate?
Okay, it's inaccurate. And let me put it this way. Those CIA agent or station chief or DIA dude, those spies from MI6 who would tell you that they know the plan and actually had the Russian plan from the start, in UK they probably will be, endowed with the title of Sir and will be, enrolled in the next to the heroes to Field Marshal Montgomery, and Admiral Nelson, because there is no way anybody in the West, or for that matter in Russia, knows what the plan is.
Andrei, just to point out, my point is that this is the inference that we've arrived at based on Russian moves. Yeah, Russian moves. Not that I'm listening to MI6 or the CIA.
No. That's my point. And also that shows how people do not understand how wars are prosecuted and how their plans are developed. So here it is. General staffs, real general staffs, which operate in complex environment, including including the processing of the enormous of data, they plan 24/7. That's what, for example, I can tell you Russian General Staff does. It plans 24/7. And each time it is development of their all kind of different contingencies, which immediately are reacted. It doesn't mean that they don't make mistakes. Some of the mistakes obviously are made, sometimes here and there on the operational level, but mostly on the tactical level. But for those people who understand what C4ISR is, which is command, control, communications, computer, intelligence, surveillance, and recon, this encapsulates this basically abbreviation, encapsulates what people do. And I cannot emphasize enough the amount of info which goes through the organs of the operational in command and control in the general staff. So in this particular case, it doesn't matter what people think and infer from what the plan was, because whatever they think it is, it's not what they think it is. And the question was from the get-go, the only reliable source of information on that matter which I saw was in early March, Vladislav Shurigin, a very famous Russian military correspondent, he was talking to the commanding officer of the brigade of the Russian Marines. And this interview was done in very early March. And the guy, and I actually posted it on my blog, the guy, he doesn't obviously name his name. He's most likely either lieutenant colonel or colonel, who is the chief of the brigade. He said, the only unexpected thing which we encountered was how brainwashed they were. That's the only thing. We adapted, he says, like immediately, almost like within 3-4 days. And it was clear that the reaction time, and especially the way the command and control is conducted from Moscow, is very fast. And that's another thing which I point out constantly. Majority of the footage, with the exception, for example, the showing of the videos of the air defense working, or Russian Ka-52 or Mi-28, working, or majority of the footage, I would say 75%, maybe 80%, of what public everywhere, both in the West and in Russia, sees. It's not the footage of Russian armed forces. These are footage of LDNR forces. They're militias, primarily. And there is a reason for that, because Russians and Russian armed forces are extremely disciplined. No cell phones are allowed there.
Yeah, I know. But the question I have, Andrei, is the following, to rephrase it then. The question is, do you think that Russia, from the get-go, had the intention of partitioning Ukraine?
Yes.
Or was this decision made on the fly? You think it was from the get-go they wanted?
It was from the get-go. And again, you have to understand that once in the first days of operation, it was clear that it's not going to be just Donbass in its former administrative borders. And you can see immediately, Mariupol, well, it was one thing. Mariupol was being removed not just because it was the part of the Donbass territory, because Mariupol always was in Donetsk region. It was to remove the flank threat for the advancing forces, which will be enveloping or grinding the main VSU grouping, which was to the north of it. It's like 1945, Zhukov, in January, instead of going to Berlin, he suddenly turns to the right, to the north, goes to Pomerania, and basically spends 2 months annihilating Pomeranian grouping, army group there. Because in order for him to alleviate the danger to his flank. So that's exactly what was.
I see that.
Then we have Kherson. We have Kherson, and we have Nikolaev, and we have Russian forces standing in Nikolaev area for almost 2 months now.
Mm-hmm. No, right. That's the question I have, whether it was Russia's intention from the very beginning to outright capture East and South Ukraine and break Ukraine in two.
Russian forces were near Nikolaev from the get-go already.
Yeah, I know, but was
so that tells you the plan. That tells you the plan. Obviously, there will be land breach. It's undeniable. It's been discussed before. It's totally the only sensible solution to the Ukraine problem.
Okay, so you do not think that there was an initial phase where the Russians
No.
could have a political solution?
No.
And so would you say then that the negotiations were really a diversion almost, even as
No, it wasn't diversion. It wasn't diversion, but it was basically how to say it. It was a necessary evil, if you wish to. Look at the person who was in charge of those negotiations.
On the Russian side or Ukrainian side?
No, on Russian side. Ukrainian side don't even bother with that. Russians knew from the get-go, you're not gonna get any kind of the sensible political solution from them. You're not. And that is why they sent the guy who has zero experience in any international affairs, warfare, or strategy, or what have you. They sent former Minister of Culture, Mr. Medinsky. The guy has whatever he has, I mean, cinematography background or whatever, So yeah, that was pretty much big hint from the get-go. It wasn't Patrushev who was negotiating. It wasn't Shoigu. It wasn't anybody. It wasn't Bortnikov of FSB. It wasn't Narishkin of SVR. It was nobody of. It wasn't any kind. It wasn't even Boris Gryzlov who was there. You had Mr. Medinsky, who was in charge of freaking drama theaters and cinematography in Russia. What do you expect? It was into everybody's face from the get-go. But yet, it was necessary evil to demonstrate that Russia, but it wasn't diversion. If he would have gotten something sensible out of Ukraine's side, sure, why not? But the point is, please, Russians are not that stupid, so to expect anything positive, knowing pretty much and having a very good intel on Ukraine. So yeah, Ukraine and land bridge of southern Ukraine was the plan.
And east, including Kharkov, was from the beginning part of the plan.
Yeah, it just was the matter of maneuvering forces. Russia didn't have enough forces to do the whole theater from the get-go. As I already stated, the Russian forces outnumbered by 1 to 3. Yeah. But that's another thing which people do not understand. Warfare is not about, we have to have 5 times more troops. This is not how it's calculated. It's calculated on the basis of the combat effectiveness. And that's when you go into the actual mathematical models and combat models, and those are studied in the serious military academies. But many people don't understand that. And that is why Russia maneuvers forces. It's normal. And of course, a lot of fighting is done by the LDNR militias.
Sorry. Alexander?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, because one of the things that I remember, this was years and years and years ago, Andrei, but reading your books, it brought it all back, was that I once read a book about Russian artillery, Soviet artillery, and it gave examples of these mathematical models that Russian Soviet officers at that, it was the Soviet Union still, used to have to learn at academies and, learn how to work things on these sorts of mathematical models. And I have to say, as a person who had studied mathematics, I was hugely intimidated by the sheer degree of mathematical knowledge that this involved. It also brought home to me, this is a book, one of the very few books on military things that I've ever read, by the way, the enormous centrality of artillery in the way that the Russians wage land war. I mean, it's not about, long, vast, tank armies hurtling across the battlefield. I don't know whether that ever actually in reality ever happens, but that the way of war is very, very much based on massive fire, worked out very, very in a very detailed way. Now, that seems to me to describe very accurately what's going on at the moment in Donbass. Is that your impression too? That it's very mathematically conceived, very methodical type of war involving enormous amounts of rocket artillery fire and all of this being carried out, grinding, as you said, the enemy down.
Yes, it is. And again, if you look at Vladimir Putin's statements, a plan, so to speak, that's the plan. That was the plan. First, demilitarization. Second, denazification. What demilitarization means? In this particular case, it means a complete destruction of the Ukrainian Nazi war machine. It has two parts. You destroy military industry, which produces weapons, and then you completely degrade or attrite or just basically annihilate armed forces as such. And that's already pretty much happened. It's just basically wrapping up in terms of grinding them down to the point of, well, they will have no choice as to surrender. And that's what is happening. After that, you know what, if need be, we'll see how fast the dashes will be done. And again, from the get-go, from the early days of the operation, you already had the actually armed forces, not of LDNR, but Russia, advancing through the Kherson area, which is southern Ukraine, to Nikolaev area. And obviously the fate of Odessa is now pretty much clear. It's not only going to be the land bridge to the Transnistria, which VSU tries now to assault, or at least, you know, show that they intend to do so, but it's also is going to be Odessa. And the issue with Odessa, it's a marvel, architectural marvel. It's a beautiful city, which was rebuilt after the World War II again. So Russians will try to do their utmost not to harm this city, you know, in any way. So it's going to be classic investment, same as Azovstal, you know, basically surrounding and waiting them out, opening humanitarian corridors, getting civilians out. And if those people do not understand, I mean, those remaining defenders, quote unquote, what expects them, then yeah, sure, the dial could be, you know, dialed up to 11, so to speak, you know. And after that, yeah, well, that's what the real war is. If need be, Russia has plenty of high precision standoff weapons, and all necessary points of pressure could be, you know, designated and exposed if need be. So it's Ukraine is done. For all intents and purposes, it's done as the state. And whatever will be left of it, that's another story. That's the story, obviously, of Kiev itself, Kiev proper, and of course of the Western Ukraine. Other than that, I mean, Kherson already stated that, yeah, we are in ruble zone. We're never going back to Ukraine. And obviously, people already in Kherson already stating, well, obviously, everybody wants to go to Russia. You know, this dying, poor, you know, drab Russia. Yeah, yet they want to go there. Same going to happen with Nikolaev, this oblast, and of course, Odessa. It's just the way it is.
Andrei, do you know Nikolaev? Because it was very much part of the world that I would have thought that you were trained up to when you were working. Was it in the coastal forces, which I believe includes the marine forces in Russia? That it was, you know, the major shipyard and place for the Black Sea. Yeah.
Nikolaev was a major shipyard. Actually, there were three of them, I believe. The two major were obviously naval shipyards. All Russian aircraft carriers which were ever built, they were built in Nikolaev. It was a major plant, which is not there anymore. It's basically a ruin. It cannot build, I mean, the freaking, you know, like 50-foot boat, let alone build serious modern combat ship. So in this particular case, when people say, oh, Russia wants Nikolaev, you know, for its shipyard facilities, I think, guys, that except for the really great base, you know, havens, you know, harbors, which are really comfortable, you know, for shipbuilding, there is not much left there except for the skeleton buildings, which are abandoned, rusting, decrepit. And so, yeah, it's not like you get anything, any of value if you go there. So plus Russia is restored, and it's being grown as I speak to you. Zaliv in Kerch, which is building now 40,000 tons displacement Russian LHD helicopter carriers, which I suspect could be actually Stovall short takeoff vertical landing aircraft carriers too, once they are afloat in 2026 or 27. The first one will be afloat. So in this case, Nikolaev is like, who knows? Obviously, the moment those areas cleared of Nazis, they will decide themselves, but most likely they will be first declaring independence from Ukraine and then eventually integrating into Russia. And then, then we'll see if Russia deems it necessary to restore Nikolaev shipbuilding facilities.
I have a comment that I wanted to make, or a little tidbit of information that you might find interesting. Kyivstar and Vodafone, the two big cell phone carriers, abruptly cut off service to the Kherson region.
Yeah.
And it seems as if the Kiev administration, the Kiev regime, has decided to just give up on Kherson. It's over insofar as that area is concerned. And so I wanted to pivot a little bit insofar as, Andrei, your thinking as to where the evolution of this war will go. Because it's clear that in the East, we have this tightening vice on the army around the Kramatorsk area, on the AFU forces around the Kramatorsk area. That grouping is getting ground down. And it's very clear, it's anecdotal evidence, but we see a lot of these videos of POWs, and they look completely demoralized.
Yeah.
Their uniforms are a mess. I mean, it looks like a ragtag bunch of survivors. And I do not mean this with any kind of disrespect towards those men who fought as valiantly as they could. I don't doubt their heroism or bravery, but they are losing. And so the question becomes, if that finally gets crushed out, ground out, would this, number one, would this affect the morale of the rest of the armed forces of Ukraine to such an extent that the whole sandcastle kind of like collapses, the morale of the entire army just collapses and the country just gives up? Or if not, what would be the next hard walnut that the Russian army has to crack after the Eastern grouping?
First, the very fact that we have now increasing number of POWs and we have the Nazi forces embedded in the regular VSU units, formations, already tells you that many people don't want to fight. But many POWs, very many, in thousands, Ukrainian POWs, the first thing they do, very many of them, when they get taken prisoners, they ask, are you going to torture us? Are you going to kill us? And then they get medical help. They getting fed. They are given place to sleep. And of course, they use a regular, they are stunned by the fact. That's how brainwashed they are. They're stunned by the fact that they are not being killed, tortured, or, sold into slavery, what have you. Unlike it is the case with, obviously, those few Russian POWs. And there is another thing, of course, it's not anecdotal. It's pretty much everybody on the front line says, and it's well known now as a fact, it's that they do not really, VSU are not into exchange of the killed in KIAs.
Yeah.
Because they don't have many KIAs from Russian side, but their number of KIAs is from the Ukrainian side is rather dramatic in many thousands. And one of the reasons for this, apart from the obvious financial thing, because they're so corrupt there. For example, if you get the guy who is MIA, missing in action, you don't have to pay the compensations.
Yeah.
But other thing is that they do not want them because their hospitals are already overflowing with the maimed, wounded, and it is tragic. No doubt about it. Make no mistake. I don't take any pleasure in saying this, human drama. But I mean, the number of KIAs is horrendous. It's actually it's in tens of thousands. And Russians now have issues with this.
To add to that, something that I heard from several sources is that the Russians are encouraging the POWs, the Ukrainian POWs, to call their homes to tell them that they're all right. And of course, they are fomenting this not just out of humanitarian reasons, but also to undermine the will of the Ukrainians, because the mothers talk to the other mothers, and it gets back that they're going to be fine with the Russians, and the Russians are not going to eat them. It's not going to be cannibalism time.
Yeah. It's definitely this point absolutely valid, but it is also really strange when we have a true humanitarian and humane attitude, and that yes, it could be used as a weapon. But can you imagine the fact that yes, we don't kill you guys, we don't torture you, we will question you. You will sign the paper that later on you will obviously take a part in cleaning after yourself, and restoring, and then go back to your families. That's very simple.
And very effective. I mean, in terms of undermining the will of the army. And so to go back to my original question, once the Eastern group has been, dealt with, let us, frankly, I pray that they are all captured alive and not killed, because to kill these men for no reason serves no purpose. But anyway, once the Eastern grouping has been dealt with, one way or the other, do you think that a two-choice tree here, that the Ukrainian armed forces will simply collapse due to low morale and the feeling that that the loss is inevitable, if that's one possibility, or the other possibility that the AFU continues fighting with the spirit and to the degree of motivation that they have shown so far? And so what would be the next tough nut to crack for the Russians? Would it be Nikolaev? Would it be what?
Well, Nikolaev, Odessa access, definitely. That will be the issue. No doubt about it. Now, in terms of the fighting and combat effectiveness of VSU, you have to remember, with whatever morale is, it's dwindling one way or another. Even if we factor out the moral factor, which is extremely important, make no mistake, the attrition is such that you cannot find any more enough number of the low-level combat specialists, those sergeants, and low-level corporals and what have you, who can substitute those who will be treated. And guess what? That also diminishes the quality of the armed forces, apart from the fact that news are getting around. So, but the tough nut will be obviously Nikolaev, Odessa. I don't know how they will be dealing with Kharkov, honestly. I don't know. I know there is a still grouping in Belarus, which is there. So, who knows? We don't know.
We've had a question, and it actually touches on something that I found interesting myself, which is about the Russian use of these long-range, high-precision missile systems. In fact, many of them. And in fact, again, going back to one of your books, I remember you discussing how the Soviets were working on high-precision, long-range missiles way back from the 1960s. Memory is not particularly good, but Juliet-class submarines and all that sort of thing. So this has been something that has been in the works for a very, very, very long time. And I would say it's been one of the most impressive aspects of the war, because when you see Western powers using cruise missiles, it doesn't seem to be as surgically used as it has been in this war. But could you comment about this and about the types of weapon systems that have been used, and maybe tell us something about their history and their background, and going all the way, as I said, back to the early 60s and even beyond?
Well, yes. Obviously, the United States loves to claim their credit for their high precision guided, weapons, but actually these were Germans in 1943 who sank Italian cruiser Roma with radio-guided bomb. This was the first time use of the precision-guided munition, So, and of course, in 1950s, you have those Soviet people, those backward, peasant Russians, who developed basically their first actual really viable weapon, which was the P-15 termite, anti-shipping missile. It was a radar-guided. But as you correctly stated, when the A-lot, the Israeli ship, which was the former American World War II destroyer, updated at that time, was sunk by the salvo of two P-15 termites from the small missile boat of Mosquito class, Project 183, the world took a note, believe me. People were shocked, that you can do that. I mean, yeah, that's what precision weaponry is. So, and United States obviously was also developing its guided cruise missiles. But in terms of anti-shipping missiles, United States never got the lead. It had this pretty proverbial now, harpoon missile, anti-shipping missile, but it's obviously morally obsolete, no matter what kind of the active head you put on it, a radar seeker, infrared seeker, what have you. But the point is, everything went from the subsonic flight first into high supersonic, and now we're looking at the hypersonic weapons which are being used. And when Russia used twice to a devastating effect this hypersonic Kinzhal, and you can see its use, it's shocking. And that pretty much it's over, guys. I mean, it's the 2,000 kilometer range, high precision hypersonic weapon. And then now with the coming of the Mach 9 Zircon, which is 1,500 kilometer range, high precision hypersonic weapon. And Russia has already the recon and targeting system already in the orbit. So what are you going to do? How are you going to defend against it? There's no defense. Not by the means of what air defense of NATO has today. And I don't think so it's going to have defense for a long time. And once you have this, it's just exactly what you're going to do. You can basically, with having the spectrum of the high precision, long range, very long range missiles, be that of the Caliber family, land attack or anti-shipping or Onyx or Kinzhal or Zircon or X-101, how are you going to stop the salvo? If you need to break through air defense, you use salvo. You calculate it. Salvo equations, salvo model by late Captain Wayne Hughes, a brilliant operational mind of the US Navy. They have been developed in 60s and 80s, 70s. It's all well known. Models are there. You can see for yourself. There's no way with the present air defense systems of NATO, all those THAADs and, Patriot PAC-3s, you can stop it. There's no way. You can shoot down like 1, 2 maybe, of the Caliber family, but that's about it. And that is why NATO is essentially defenseless, and they know it. Actually, there are a number of the papers submitted to the Congress also about the basically United States proper being absolutely naked. It cannot defend against any kind of that cruise missile.
So the question becomes to me is, we're talking now about a second and third front, the Transnistria and the Western Ukraine, Eastern Polish front.
Okay.
Do you think realistically, let's set aside Transnistria, because Transnistria strikes me, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, that it's sort of like a desperation move on the part of the armed forces of Ukraine, and that as a realistic matter, it's probably not going to happen. But the Polish incursion into Western Ukraine seems more likely. And so I've been thinking along two lines. Number one, that Russia could decide to mark its territory, put out a devastating attack to incoming Polish forces, and basically say, don't come in here, you're not welcome. One possibility. Or another possibility is that Russia deliberately decides to sort of like step aside and let the Poles go into Lviv and take Lviv, the city and the oblast, and sort of like create a counterbalance to what they're doing in the east, if you will, and by this method break Ukraine into competing political interests. Which do you think is likely, that the Russians let them in or blow them out?
Oh gosh, it depends on timing. I think, first, let's be very straight here. Lvov is the Polish, German, Jewish city. It always was. It was created. Ukraine wasn't even factoring there in any way. Galicia is Polish land. The Western Kresy, as they call it. Russians know that, but it's all about timing. If Poland decides to do it right now, I think so Russia will respond. But I make no mistake. I do not even pretend to be historian of the Western Ukraine or Poland, Polish-Ukrainian relations. I simply don't know. But I defer here to a person who is an extraordinary expert in this particular case. It is Mr. Andrei Martyanov, who just yesterday stated that inevitably Poland will get their lands. Russia probably will do nothing about it and will gladly let them have it. Another matter, and this is now the purely political matter. If Poland decides to do it now, we might get the severe reaction from Russia. It's all about timing. But
so if Russia feels confident in its possession of the south of Ukraine and the east of Ukraine in maybe 4 to 8 weeks from now, then perhaps they would be almost indifferent to whether Poland has an incursion into Galicia. Is that what you're saying?
As long as Poland doesn't move beyond Galicia.
Sure.
That's the issue. Who decides what Poland wants to do? What if they want, and I give you another guy who is actually specialist, unlike me, in Ukraine, and he was actually working for government, Mr. Rostislav Ishchenko, a very famous publicist, and he's Ukrainian. I mean, he's Russian, but I mean, he considers himself Russian, but he was born there, he lived there, he worked for the Kiev government, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He says, what if Poland moves to Vinnytsia, Well, then Russians probably will move to Vinnytsia too, So Poland wants not only Galicia, which is understandable. Let's face it, it's their lands. But they want probably some kind of the political capital and declare, as always doing PR, oh, you see, we defeated Russians, we drove to Vinnytsia. I don't think so they will be able to drive to Vinnytsia because they will be annihilated, and if you look at the terrain there, it's all those same fields, all those same small forests, easy for targeting, easy for guidance. But it's the timing. And I don't know what Russian political leadership considers good timing for Poland inevitably getting their Galicia back. I don't know. I really don't know. I hate to speculate. I hate to comment on something which I don't know for sure. And but evidently their mood is such that, eventually Poland will get it back.
Yeah, because my thinking at this point is that Russia will take all of the south of Ukraine, all of the coast on the Black Sea, including Odessa, including Transnistria, and eastern Ukraine, including Kharkov. Poltava, maybe not. I do think that they will take Dnipropetrovsk.
Dnipropetrovsk,
Yeah, I think that is in the cards, but I think that by the time they get to the issue of Dnipro, it'll be so obvious that there won't be any battle. The city will simply fall. But the Kharkov is, for me, the issue as to whether it will fall or there will be an actual battle. Obviously, for obvious reasons, I hope there's no battle. But the issue seems to me, and I've been thinking about this from quite a while ago, almost the beginning of this, that the Western Ukraine would go to Poland, and there would be a rump Ukraine that would have to be a government that is friendly to Russia. I mean, basically Lukashenko 2.0, a government that is friendly and docile towards Moscow, either led by Medvedchuk or led by somebody like that with longstanding ties to Russia. And also, I also thought to myself that perhaps Hungary would take a little bite out of Ukraine, but that's not really important. It's so minor that it doesn't matter. The point I want to make is that, see, this rump Ukraine, Scott Ritter had a very good point that he said that the Russians want to maintain Zelensky because they need him to be the one to sign a document of surrender.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And what happens if he flees Ukraine and establishes a government in exile? What would happen in those circumstances?
Oh, it doesn't matter in terms of the rump, which will be there, because it will be deindustrialized. Kiev doesn't have much left in and around it anymore. So, I mean, I don't know what will be the political arrangement there will be. I'm not sure about Medvedchuk, honestly, but the only thing that he is somehow, related to Putin, and his daughter's wedding and what have you, it's not really that important of a fact at this stage.
No. I'm just saying, really, as a
Who may emerge after that? Who knows? Zelensky, if he survives, he may try to do whatever he wants. It doesn't matter. Geography and economics play their own, role, so to speak. Don't forget that white immigration and, Tsarist monarchists, they also had their, so to speak, their exile. How much good did it do to them?
nothing.
Yeah, and so it's just a matter of whatever the political arrangement will be after Zelensky either says, you know what, guys, I have been under constant, threat for my life from those SAS people and Nazi, which could be the case, actually.
That's the word we're
Most
hearing.
likely the case, that I had to do this. So once they are removed and he survives, hey, dude, if you want to run this rump of a country, be our guest, But it will never be. It will never have real armed forces. It will have probably some, paramilitary police force. That's it. Who cares what they do there?
And will Russia occupy it for a few years before giving it up, or what do you think? Or just
oh gosh, if Kiev folds, so to speak, there might be some entrance of Russian troops, but I don't know. Honestly, it's a speculation at this stage.
No, I'm just kind of curious. I'm always curious about the future, obviously.
Well, yeah, I am not into this kind of crystal ball Cassandra kind of mode, because it's very difficult to say. The political dynamics changes all the time. And again, as I said, Zelensky could have been annihilated a long time ago. Russia doesn't do it because, and Scott Ritter, absolutely correct here. I 100% concur that Russia needs somebody to sign the basically new articles of reincorporation of Ukraine. And, and this rump of a country, who cares what they do, as long as they don't, you have the control over forces which can control some kind of the insurgency element or can control the possible terrorist underground, which will have the Belarus and Russia as its target. Well, it's going to take some years to, calm things down, definitely. But I don't know at this point what will and who will be running this rump of the Ukraine, which will be called Ukraine proper. You know what? Putin is a very legalist man. He is extremely legalist, despite the fact that he will not only a good lawyer in his own right, he obviously is the also national security professional. But when he says Russia will never occupy Ukraine, guess what? He probably means the Ukraine which will be left and not occupy it. So I think so. That's what he meant, and we can on his word. He usually doesn't lie. He means what he says, and he says what he means. So there you go.
Sometimes slyly.
Yeah. So take it however you want it, but I mean, I don't think so. Russia's going to occupy the Ukraine which will be left. That's my idea.
I'm going to make just a few observations. I gather there's been some discussion in Kiev about the fact that that the war will go on even once Ukraine has lost Donbass, with an admission that Ukraine is going to lose Donbass very soon. I'm going to say straight away, I'm not a military person, but I would have thought that if Ukraine loses Donbass, there'll be an awful lot of people in Ukraine who will say, what was the point of that? Why did all those people die? Why did we send the troops to fight in Donbass? Why were those hundreds and thousands of people sacrificed if we were going to give it up anyway? So I would have thought that there would be a very, very sharp collapse of morale if Ukraine loses Donbass. And I would have thought that if the plan is to try to reconstitute a Ukrainian army after Donbass is lost, with this hodgepodge of weapons from the West, I don't think it'll be very much of an army at that point. That's my own personal view. I may be completely wrong about this. The second is, if Zelensky flees the country, then I think you will get a political collapse in Ukraine, what's left of Ukraine, and that will create all kinds of other problems. And I'm certainly not going to try and predict what the outcome of that is going to be. But I would have thought that getting any kind of Ukrainian government together in any form is going to be a struggle for whoever has to pick up the pieces. Can I, sorry, and I'm sorry to do this, Andrei, I probably am talking much about technical military issues, but it does seem to me that I've got a person here who is an outstanding person who understands technical military issues more than almost anyone else. Would you agree with something else, which I fear, I feel about this war, which is that one thing that has been completely exposed over the course of this fighting is the total failure of this legend, this myth of the all-conquering, all-powerful drone. It's clear to me, I mean, looking at all of this, that if you have the kind of air defense system that the Russians have developed for their armed forces, the drones, Bayraktar drones or any other kind of drone, as strike forces, simply can't function. I gather the Ukrainians have already said that the Bayraktar drone is useless from their point of view as a viable weapon. And I suspect that's pretty much true of every other drone system. The American Raptors and all of those, they might be effective in Middle Eastern environments against irregular forces, but against a military organized with a kind of air defense system that Russia has, they have clearly and comprehensively failed. Is that your own view?
First, about your first 2 points, actually, about the morale and political process, I agree completely. I agree completely with you on that matter. It's brilliant observation. Per technological issue, yes, again, it was one of the American generals, I don't remember his name, who said the worst thing which could have happened to us was the victory over the Saddam's army. It instilled the false sense of, knowledge of the war, while in reality it was the Turkish shoot. In real war, in the real environment, which is comprehensive air defense environment, electronic warfare environment, yes, when you have Ukrainians themselves saying that Bayraktars are absolutely useless, and this is a quote. So, yeah, what do you expect? I mean, if you look at some point of time, the white book will be issued. And I wrote it on a number of occasions already for the last couple of months. We will be stunned by the actually data which will be released in terms of the operation of Russian air defense. Out of those Tochka U's, ballistic, tactical, and tactical operational sort of missiles, I mean, most of them have been shut down. Some of them went, got through. Basically, the Ukrainian aviation was wiped out, most of it, not all of it, but most of it, in the first 2-3 weeks. So, and now even Ukraine admits, and they are now disclosing, oh yeah, this ghost of Kiev was kind of collective. It's just ridiculous. And if you go back to the 2011 Time magazine, Mr. Douglas McGregor, brilliant American operational mind, he wrote an article about the superfluous U.S. Marine Corps force. And he wrote there, and he stated there are some things which, if United States fights the army, the real armies with real air forces, with real air defenses, and I'm quoting him basically, you can look it up. He said that the number of casualties United States can expect is about 130,000 people in the first 2 months, which would be about the same as, in the First World War. While Colonel Wilkerson, chief of staff of Colin Powell, as much as I do not agree with many of his political points, he stated when he was interviewed by the same way as we are online a couple of months ago, they said, what happens if NATO or United States places its army? What will be the level of casualties? He was basically blunt, 40,000 in the first week. And they were like, What? Well, no, it's just the way it is. I mean, I don't think so. NATO armies want to hide again behind civilians and using them as human shield. And once you get into the field, and once you have to fight actual war, not those, sitting into the underground tunnels, then suddenly you are exposed to what, as I already stated in the beginning, NATO never fought and never experienced in its life before. First, you're gonna get the rear services and rear, stocks of munition and headquarters destroyed, and then you have to go against the First World Air Force and air defense, which NATO cannot even comprehend what it is. So good luck with that, So and that's what it is. And what can I say? For them, the VSU was their best proxy ever. We already saw how the basically Afghan forces collapsed in 48 hours, so I mean, that Iraqi forces are, there you go. That was the best bet against Russia. They knew, oh yeah, let's pump them with weapons. The Lend-Lease thing, which they proposed, actually it was already, as it turned out, a couple weeks before Russian assault. So that means they were preparing it, and as we can see today, I mean, yeah, that weapon systems, they're not that good. Let's be frank.
One of the things I heard about drones, and I've been hearing a lot of talk on Telegram channels and whatnot, is that, yeah, the big drones, the Turkish drones and whatnot are kind of like, they're useless to a certain extent. But those micro drones that are used for targeting of artillery have proven to be incredibly useful, apparently. Of being able to just hover and be able to pinpoint. And one of the quotes I heard was, it's turning a howitzer into a sniper, a 155 millimeter sniper rifle, which I thought was an interesting observation. That seems to be the takeaway right now of drones. The big ones are useless, but the mini drones are extremely useful on a tactical level.
Well, yeah, but do not forget, it's not only drones, it's also counter-battery radar. For example, Russians use the updated Farabi and the Zoopark Zoo. They are excellent. And that is why basically the whole pattern of attacks, very diminished attacks by, for example, Ukrainian artillery, is that you better get the hell out of there, as fast as you can, because once you are spotted, even by radar, the response is coming really fast. And drones, yeah, smaller drones obviously are good, but then again, there are means to deal with them. And for example, Panzer, Russian S-1 Panzer, they have the munitions to deal not with just drones like Bayraktar, which is very easy, actually. They are easy targets, let's face it. Okay, they're simple, easy, but especially in terms of how the air defense, real air defense, is organized and how it is controlled and how echeloned it is. What echelons are. Even small drones, the Panzers, they have now this munition called nail, gvoist. It's a very small light rocket. Missile, basically, which is launched, and it's designed precisely to shoot down all those micro drones. If you ask me how effective it is, I can give you one word: Khmeimim. Khmeimim Air Base in Syria, which is defended by, apart from S-300V4 and S-400s, it is defended by Panzer and it is defended by Tor M1. Guess what? Have you heard many stories about Russian air asset in Syria being bombed in the airport or in the airfield? No, but they are attacked there pretty much daily. Well, guess what? Nothing gets through, including those small micro drones and the kamikaze drones and things of this nature, which are being launched constantly, including from Idlib. Also, today it is kind of less acute problem than it was before. They handle it just fine. I
wanted to ask you something, Andrei. I've been thinking a mental model, and I want you to tell me if it's accurate or incorrect. which is the following, insofar as we were talking a little bit about Ukrainian troops. Now, as I understand it, over the last 8 years, Ukrainian troops have been consistently being trained by NATO personnel to be interoperable, to be basically NATO's command and control, communications tactics, basically another NATO unit. And the difference, of course, is that the Ukrainian armed forces have been rotated consistently through the Donbass over the past 8 years, so that they have actual on-the-ground combat experience, perhaps limited, but they have that experience, unlike all the other NATO armies, in the rest of the alliance. So would it be accurate to say that the Ukrainian armed forces at the beginning of this conflict, the Ukrainian armed forces were effectively the best NATO troops in the NATO alliance, and that their failure to deal with the Russian armed forces is what has prevented NATO from getting into this war, because they realized, holy cow, we're not up for this. We don't have the numbers, and our best NATO troops, the armed forces of Ukraine, have not been able to succeed in any measurable way against the armed forces of Russia. Would that be accurate assessment, an accurate model?
At least very close to accuracy, but we have to remember also that NATO definitely did provide some communications and even limited kind of net-centric capability to armed forces of Ukraine. But to what degree NATO provided them with actual NATO links, I don't think so, unless they have obviously their NATO officers, which is pretty much a sure thing, operating there on the ground with, because they wouldn't allow Ukrainians to have the access to the communication technology of NATO. And we have to admit, the United States especially, it has excellent, C4, no doubt about it. But in general, you are correct, because as just previously what I stated, can United States Army take 40,000 KIAs in a month? No.
Not politically.
It will create a crisis. Russia can, United States cannot. It will create a political crisis of such a profound scale in the United States. It's going to be in months. It's going to be approximately the same number of KIAs as it was in the Vietnam War for 10 years, 56,000 killed. But then, of course, what happens when you lose the full carrier battle group? That will be the shock. And do not forget, United States is, again, when was the last time the United States fought serious enemy?
45?
Vietnam, that's it. Nobody.
Korea.
Well, yeah, Korea and Vietnam. That's it, And there is this mythology. But look at the American, I'm not talking about European, as some general staff people in Russia say, we don't even sweat about European NATO.
You don't worry about the chihuahuas.
Yeah, no. It's the fact that, look at the record. I'm sorry, guys. It's not impressive. Let's face it. And yeah, don't forget the other proxy. That was completely by the NATO standards. And Israel also took part. It's Georgia. 2000
Yeah.
It disintegrated in 72 hours. Basically, the whole armed forces, which was basically the core army corps size armed forces. And Russians were again outnumbered and were not as good equipped as they are today. So that's the real combined arms operations. It's not your, oh yeah, let's get the, targeting from our drone. Let's launch the damn JSON or what have you, or some JDAM, and oh, hooray, we won. Doesn't work like this. And that's what I'm always saying. The real war is a very democratic affair. The enemy also has a say in it, And then, of course, there are people in Pentagon who understand what's happening. United States cannot sustain what it will sustain in case of the fighting Russia near Russian borders. I'm not talking about the morale, which will be on Russian side, and it will be very high. But other than that, I mean, okay, you attack Russia, well, guess what? Stones in London and DC are getting rearranged. Simple as that. That's not Iraq. That's not even Iran. And Iran can stand for itself, you know? So this is serious. This is real war. This is not this baloney, you know, PR, which is like bombing into the Stone Age, some backward army, you know? And there you go.
Well, I mean, I completely agree with you, but here's my fear is that, see, to go back to what we were talking about at the very beginning of this conversation, the political leadership in the West, they are incompetent. They are people who do not know what they are doing. They have been trained to be very good at something that does not matter insofar as the real world is concerned.
Yeah.
And so my fear, my real terror, is that these fools will pull the trigger on a war. I mean, come on, they went ahead and shot themselves in the gut with these sanctions that are only hurting themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And so what's to stop them from proceeding with a war that will precipitate their own destruction? That's the thing that I'm terrified about. And I don't want to invite you to speculate because I know you don't like to speculate, but I suppose what I want to say is that I'm absolutely terrified that these morons will get into a war, will expand this war, and lead to a catastrophe for our entire civilization, for the civilization that has taken hundreds of years to build. This is my fear, and I think it's a genuine fear at this point.
Not yours alone. I'm on record. I wrote 3 books on that, writing the 4th one. I explicitly state there. My main fear is these guys, they will get themselves into the position that they will not be in the corner, and from which they will not be able to extricate themselves. And as I already stated, United States is extremely nuclear biased nation. It cannot take serious casualties. It cannot take actual destruction. So do I have this fear? Absolutely. But in the same time, as I am on record again, the last vestiges of remaining competence in terms of the managing something, for example, as strange as it sounds today, it's Pentagon. Let's hope even among this layer of those moron generals, political, what called the parquet generals, who do not know anything but promote themselves in the, Pentagon bureaucracy. There are a lot of people in the Central Command or whatever the African Command, who do know the score. That's the hope, They do know the score. They know what's going to happen, And the fact that Scott Ritter, Douglas McGregor, and many other people, even, Colonel Wilkerson, who obviously has a very strange political view on Russia, but even they, when they talk about that, we're going to get our ass kicked, badly. That's good. That means what? Somebody still knows the score, and that's what matters. So that will probably not allow to go nuclear. But in terms of the combined arms conventional, well, I don't know. I mean, I won't put much bet on the NATO navies anymore, or forces. First, you need to collect forces to even have any force to attack Russia at some of the theaters, some of the fronts. But that's going to take a lot of time, like a year, maybe.
What I'm noticing is that, see, the political environment in the United States seems to be changing. An article appeared today in the New Yorker magazine, which a lot of people in the audience, especially internationally, would say, who cares about some random magazine, a literary magazine at that? But actually, the New Yorker is very important because it's the magazine that all of the intelligentsia in the United States read. And in that magazine, an article appeared that was quite celebrated about the fact that it was admitted openly that this is a proxy war between the United States and Russia. Now, 2 weeks ago, you would have been called a Putin bot. I said this, 6-8 weeks ago, that this was a proxy war between the US and America. And they said that, oh, you're a Putin shill and you're a Putin bot and blah, blah. But now they're admitting it, which is it seems like a subtle and almost trivial thing, but it's actually very important because it signals that politically the space is opening up for the United States to come closer to open warfare with Russia.
I think so. Actually, I think so. Here I have to disagree. I think so. It's actually quite opposite. Proxy
Really?
war.
Please, how?
proxy wars are not fought to get involved into the open conflict, with your proxy fighting who your proxy fights against. So it's actually quite opposite. It's the additional layer. It's an additional step in escalation. It's good to have additional step of escalation, as long as it doesn't go to the what's the name of it, nuclear threshold. I can give you,
but I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that them admitting that it's a proxy war is one more step up on the escalation of a direct U.S.-Russia conflict.
This admission has a very profound psychological effect. You still better get defeated by the proxy. Your proxy gets defeated, then you get yourself obliterated. And mad mutually assured destruction is still there. It's in place, and no matter how much logical rationale we want to kind of apply here, the point is, even those nut jobs in DC, they know once it starts flying, they are gone. And believe me, most of the neocon cabals are cowards.
No question about that.
Yeah, and they want to leave. They want to eat their foie gras in the sea, and they want to screw, very exquisite, prostitutes and rest in there, So that's what they are. They want their golf. Believe me, they are good only when somebody dies for them. But when they have to understand really their consequences, and they do. Even those, hysteria, and that's what actually is a good thing. You can see the level of hysteria, because it's not so much for the going to war with Russia. It's in the tacit admission of the sustaining yet another defeat. That's what is this all about. And by the way, I want to add to your New Yorker thing. Here it is. Today, the Hill, the most neocon, pro-America, the great thing. Guess what? Why sanctions against Russia may not work, and the guy writes about that. Guess what? Here it is. I quote: "The West, in fact, is caught in a trap." That's what it is. That's the Hill. If you look and read the Hill, which is, again, it's the rabidly neoconish, triumphalistic piece of garbage, out there. If they begin to publish this, something changed. As in May,
that they're stepping back from the ledge, then?
Oh yeah, because there is an understanding. There is an understanding, and as I already stated, last vestige of their actual competence today in the United States. It's not Ivy League schools. Most of them, their humanities programs are fraud. Taught by the bimbos who do not know, pardon me, shit from Shinola. I'm talking about the last people who have any degree of basically competence are people in Pentagon. That's funny. That is the funny thing. When I have to say this, it's like, oh my God, we only have to, rely on people who, military, experience in the United States, who have an idea of what is going on and how it is going on. And you know what? That's the hope. Plus, of course, we need to understand that the new generation of the American politicians is beginning to emerge. When you have some dumbass as Marco Rubio, the guy is a complete moron, but when he is on quote, "Oh, Russia is not Iraq." Well, thank God. How long it took you to figure that out? But I quoted him. He is on record a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, Russia is not Iraq. Yeah. Can you imagine this guy who never worked a day in his life, and did anything productive in his life? He finally figured that out, So yeah, there is some definite kind of change of tone, and they are preparing public opinion for the failure in Ukraine, and that's probably good sign.
I agree with that, by the way. I've noticed also a change of tone in the British media. One of the things is lots of claims about Russian losses, which have now become, they flatlined. If you look, that they're now quoting the same numbers over and over again, but there's gradual admissions. Even Boris Johnson a short while ago admitted that Ukraine might lose the war, and that things are not going as planned.
Yeah.
And of course, we've also had comments today. The EU is split on oil sanctions.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
apparently recriminations, lots of things. What I wanted to ask you about, Andrei, is what do you know about the mood in Russia at the moment? My own feeling about this is that this has led to a massive consolidation of Russian society. I think at the beginning of the war, there was astonishment and I think some fear, but I think that has changed. I think there's been a major, major consolidation. And that's my sense about, the broader population in Russia, including, by the way, the political class. But what about the military, of which you yourself was a part? What is the mood in the military in Russia? And can I just say something before I ask, you asked that question? Because there's one particular fact about the Russian military, which I've been sort of following over the last, not just the last few weeks, but, some time, and which I do find extremely surprising and very, very different from the West. And that is that in Russia, the military discusses things with each other quite openly. So I find that, there's situations where officers, are able to talk and debate each other in ways that in Britain would be inconceivable. So, a colonel can argue with a general about tactics, about strategy, about technology things in ways that just does not happen certainly in Britain, and I'm guessing in the West too. Now, so if that's correct, I presume that they're also talking about the war and what is happening in the war. What is the feeling there? I mean, is the mood, is it a mood of resolve? Is there much criticism? What kind of debates are taking place?
You're absolutely correct, Alexander. There was an incredible consolidation. And again, there is that feature, of course, of which here in the West, due to Soviet dissidents, they are not acquainted with, and especially new products of the Ivy League schools, Russia specialists. It's the fact that there is an intense resolve. There is also an intense hatred of Nazism, which obviously runs deep into history of Russian people. Just to give you an example, my family, me and my wife, we're average Russians, ethnic Russians. We are US citizens, of course, today, and we live in the United States. We love this country still for all its flaws, But as a Russian family, well, guess what? I never had my grandfathers all killed on the front of the World War II. My grandmother's second husband was my grandfather, whom I knew, the step-grandfather, wonderful man. He was also the veteran. My wife, she never had grandfathers, all killed on the front. In fact, my mother's grandfather, Nikolai Grigorievich Prigozhin, he was killed in Donbass in 1941, summer 1941. We are typical Russian family. Russians have background in war no nation in the world has. I mean, somebody always fought or died in Russia. Somebody has somebody connected to the armed forces, and it's not militarism. Actually, Russians profoundly hate the war because they know what it is. That is why there was a massive collective laughter, Homeric laughter, when Obama was talking about, quote unquote, we know the price of war. We Americans know the price of war. Really? You know what? I mean, that's what my first book is about. It. We're talking about historical perspectives and attitudes to warfare, which have no actually parallels. And this is not Russian rah-rah. Don't forget that prior to even 2010, all Russian men, and even today, most of them, they went through the armed forces. They all served. Take any old fart in 65 years old, guess what? Unless he was, some, I don't know, researcher or what have you. Oh, he's been to the army. Oh, I've been in the Navy. Oh, I know how this works. I know how that thing. Oh, this radio station, I know. So people don't understand how militarized in a good sense Russia is. That is why you have also different cultural priorities. And even the fact that Patriarch Kirill, in his service in the main cathedral of Russian armed forces, which is in itself something very special, and in his sermon about before the Easter, he was talking and he was invoking great patriotic war and fight against fascism. That tells you something, So, and that is why now you have this incredible consolidation. Putin ratings, approval ratings are like in the 80s. It's just, they, as usual, the West made a bet on the very wrong horse of Russian so-called liberals, many of whom are just direct assets of the intel services and people who without profession, basically, and they thought they knew Russia. They don't. Read watch interview and introduction of this, it's clown. She's clown. Rebecca Koffler. She was a National Security Agency. She graduated Moscow Pedagogical Institute, for crying out loud. And then she got into the IT, security thing. And she talks about, I know the Russian strategic culture. No, you don't. Also, you never knew. You have no clue about it, How can you? But that's the kind of people who run the Russian study field, who consult, the Western leaders on Russia and how it works. Because if the normal people will consult about Russian realities, real Russian realities, United States and the West might have reconsidered doing what they are doing today. But they wanted this echo chamber. They wanted to self-aggrandize themselves. They wanted to feel themselves so important and infallible. Well, guess what? They're paying the price now because of that. So, what can I say? And I agree with you, Alexander. I agree. Consolidation, incredible consolidation. And hatred towards the Ukrainian Nazis, what they did to civilians.
Also, there's something else too that ever since Peter the Great, Russia, it seems to me, there's been a large sector of the Russian elite class, the intellectuals, the upper classes, professionals, who have sort of like had their nose pressed up against the glass, looking at Europe,
absolutely.
Yearning for Europe. And some of that yearning has turned into dismissal of Russian culture by these European-centric Russians. But with this forcible divorce by Europe, that cutting off that line between Europe and Russia, and in such a brutal way, and with the whole Russophobia thing, which is just frankly despicable as far as I'm concerned. And it goes against everything that liberal democracies are supposed to be about, which is, we're talking about collective guilt here, which is goes flying in the face of all that in the West we hold as important. Well, it seems that all of those people have turned away from Europe, all those Russians turned away from Europe, and that break will never be repaired as far as I'm concerned. Certainly not in the next 70 years as far as I'm concerned. Do you agree with that? Or do you
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. And when I go to Russia, not in a while now because of the COVID, and now there are other issues, obviously. I never saw in my life, and believe me, I am a good old Cold Warrior, okay?
Mm-hmm.
My graduate degree is in destroying U.S. Navy, okay? And the point is that I never saw so much condescension and contempt towards West in my life, even during the Cold War. There was nothing like this, nothing. And the most important thing is that's what they don't want to tell you. And of course, they lie all the time. It's young people, which is stunningly anti-European and anti-Western in this respect. Just to give you an example, you already know about this babushka with the red banner.
Yes, famous.
Well, guess what? Youth now does graffiti of her all over the place. You can look it up. It's just unbelievable, Although people say that the initial graffiti was Chinese, which I totally believe because there are many Chinese who are actually rooting for Russia. But meme, so to speak, now is all over the place in Russian cities, Russian villages. It's became unbelievable, and that is why it's incredible when you have the motherland mother, the famous Volgograd statue, and when you have this babushka, and her shadow is the this monument, magnificent monument in Volgograd, Stalingrad. I was stunned how this thing just absolutely went not viral. It's not viral. It's like, I don't know. It's probably going to be on the parade on the May 9th, somehow represented.
No. They have said that they are going to have her there at the parade.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. I hope you're right. I hope that those rumors about her and her husband being, moved to Barnaul allegedly are true. I wish they were confirmed, but until I see it,
But that's not important. What's important is that the morale of young people, you're saying, because I obviously don't have my finger on the pulse. You're saying that the Russian young people are the ones who are most rejecting the West now?
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
And what signs do you have of this, apart from the graffiti of Babushka Z?
Oh, no. Graffiti is just this small part of it. I know my relatives, my wife's relatives. We have nephews and people like that. They were already in 2016, 2018, so those times you could see already there. And that was Moscow. But if you wanted to see the most profound thing, I posted it in my blog. In 2010, it was 12 years ago. You can look at the 100,000 people in Moscow, no less, Moscow, the hotbed of Russian liberalism. You had those young people singing in unison the song about the battalion, paratroop battalion from the Great Patriotic War. And in unison, it's incredible. And all young people. And it's the kind of sacred movie, the Belarus Station. It's a sacred movie for Russians. It was made in 1973. It had an immense impact and still continues to have it. And the fact that, and it was 12 years ago. Now go back to April, latest, recently, 3 weeks ago, and Luzhniki, and how they sing Katyusha, young people celebrating their reunification with the Crimea, and they sing this Donbass war songs. That tells you everything you need to know. When you have 100,000 people singing like in one voice, and they are young, there you go. And it's Moscow, mind you, not even other cities. So
we've been going for what, just 2 hours? Is this perhaps a good moment to stop? I don't know what others think.
Well, I'm up for taking questions. I don't know about you guys.
Okay, we can take some questions. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, Andrei,
Alex,
you have time for some,
Andrei?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let me
just time question.
Give me two minutes to just go through the questions.
Yeah.
Andrei, one thing that I was thinking when I was in Moscow, I remember I was at the Atrium shopping mall in Kurskaya, and there was a bunch of I don't know, like 17, 18, 19-year-olds, and they were very well dressed and just really put together kids. Yeah. And I was just thinking to myself, this generation of youth, of teenagers, all they've known is a Russia that's been prosperous under one man, and that is Vladimir Putin. It is very much the Putin generation. What do you think of that, Andrei?
Yeah, but absolutely. But you have to also, paradoxically, Putin has an enormous rating among youth. And again, go back to last year or this year, Luzhniki, and see when they announced Putin coming out on the stage to talk to 100,000 people. That's the roar probably AC/DC would dream about, listening in their rock concert, okay? He's a rock star for them, okay? That's the other thing. And I agree with you. They are. Of course, there are critics and all that, but for the most part, And there is a good understanding that it's not just Putin. It's basically a collective Putin, which is now the guy embodies. And so he's not alone. Again, who would ever known that Mr. Medvedev is a just absolutely war hawk, you know? The guy is just, oh my God, they better pray that Putin stays in power for much longer. Because if this dude comes, oh my gosh. So there you go. That's what it is. But of course, this truth never gets through in the West. I mean, it gets through in the alternative media. But when you look at this military industrial media complex of the West, it's pathetic, really. The guys lie like nonstop. I mean, they make things up as they go. But yes, that this youth, they know, many of them are, I mean, they are patriots, okay? So,
can I just add to that? I mean, back in, I think it was 2014 or 2015, I actually went on an invitation to Perm. This is an academic invitation that came from Perm University. And I had many, many interactions with the student body at Perm University. And can I just say, Perm is a city with a history of supporting liberal politicians. I mean, it's not widely surprising, but well known. Yeah. It's a bit surprising. But anyway, I interacted with many of the young people there at the university. And I have to say that completely dispelled any idea that these young people were in any way pro-Western or attracted to or were anything else other than deeply patriotic in terms of their own country. They were also, by the way, very, very well informed, far better informed, in my opinion, about international questions than people in the West were. So it was not because they didn't know or weren't aware about things, but as I said, it completely dispelled any idea that there is this vast pool of pro-Western sentiment amongst young people in Russia. I mean, it was completely not the case amongst the student body that I met in Perm. And by the way, also on the particular point that Andrei was making about Russia not being a militaristic society, I mean, you know, if you see Russian war films, you will understand very quickly that the Russians do understand war and have no particular love for it. And Russia makes the best war films by far. And one particular war film that the Russia made, which, by the way, is not one of my favorites, which is The Cranes Are Flying. I'm sure Andrei knows about it. Not a particular fan, but there is an extraordinary moving scene at the very end where you see all the soldiers coming back from the Second World War in a train. And there's an extraordinary speech that one soldier makes and about, you know, how they're going to rebuild after the war. And he actually says that we came back with this intense hatred of war. Exactly the words that you've used.
Well, in terms of movies and of course the book, Sergei Bondarchuk's masterpiece, War and Peace, it's a 7-hour long movie. Hollywood even today will not be able to do anything like this. Absolutely not. It's and CGI. It will reduce it to a cheap CGI, you know, pathetic showing. But this movie, of course, incredibly truthful to Tolstoy masterpiece. You know, this is the thing which people have to watch to understand how Russians treat war. Always did. You know, and of course, yeah, there are number of wonderful Soviet, especially war movies, and just the Georgian, well, it's actually Soviet, The Father of the Soldier. It's a stunner. It's just, you know, there are some other things of this nature, which, and Ballad of the Soldier, you know, it's, those are immortal movies, and of course, Belarusian Station. So it's, yeah, Russians hate war. I hate war. I cannot stand it. You know, I hate the, you know, collapse of the society. I went through it. I know what the bullets begin to fly, you know, and it's a horrible tragedy for everybody, you know. But, you know, what can I say? You know, I try to do my little best, you know, to inform people. I know you guys do. That's for sure. That's why I watch you all the time too, you know. So.
All right, let's take some questions. How about it?
Okay.
Andrei Alexander Gonzalo.
20 minutes. 15, 20
Great.
minutes.
Okay, 15, 20 minutes.
Sure.
Great. Real quick, Gonzalo, everybody, a big shout out to Gonzalo because he organized this live streaming.
Yeah, Gonzalo, thank you. I'm so happy you are
very,
alive
very much.
now.
Well, no, it was my pleasure.
Are you there,
know.
Gonzalo?
Just and I just want to say to Alex and Alexander, thank you so much for being so welcoming to me. Because Andrei, not only with you, because of my circumstances of not having my channels at this time, Alex and Alexander have been so welcoming. I can't thank them enough. And during the time that I was during my lost week, Alex and Alexander, really kept the attention on me, and I will never be able to thank them enough. And I just want them to know that personally from me and publicly, because they really helped me out. And after I was released, I saw how much that they had been working on my behalf. And like I said, I can never thank them enough. And it's always going to be a debt that I will have, that I will struggle to repay. Yes.
Well, great. We thank you, Gonzalo. The viewers thank you. Andrei, let's get to some questions. And some of them, let's see, some of them may be tough, but let's see how Andrei handles it. How will the denazification of Ukraine be completed? This is from Paul Woking.
How it will be completed?
How will it be completed? The denazification.
Realistically.
Oh gosh, realistically, years, if not generation.
No. I'm sorry. I said legalistically. They're going to
legalistically
I think
outlaw.
to do it very by the book.
First, you have to understand that introduction, which is already happening, both ruble and Russian TV and Russian media channels already has a very positive impact. And then, of course, legalistically, you have to create the special security services, which will be dealing with the remnants of the Nazi, both official and underground. So, and you have to change the curriculum in schools, especially history curriculum. Don't forget, many Ukrainians, and this is not a freaking joke, they really think that they are actually dug up the Black Sea. And they think that they are basically the fathers and mothers of Sumerian civilization. This is not a joke. That's what they teach them. So yeah, that will be a long process, but it will be through the obviously change of the education, especially how the kids are brought up, mass media policies, and of course, pure security measures, which are of course, establishment of the proper security apparatus, which will be able to handle all kinds of provocations and Nazi underground. That's the only way I can see it.
All right, from Jay Galt, this is very relevant to what happened today with Lavrov. Why did Lavrov choose this moment to comment on the ethnicity of a famous Austrian? No way he didn't plan this out.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about that? Okay. Yeah. Well,
the Italian interview, the interview with the Italian media. With
yes, I know what you're talking about. Oh, I'm pretty sure it wasn't planned. It's the profound conviction. The main, so to speak, motive of the Western media is that there can be no Nazis in Ukraine because Zelensky is a Jew. So how a Jew can, run Nazis? Oh, well, he can. And then, of course, the fact that I don't know in terms of if Mr. Hitler had some Jewish roots. There are speculations about it. I'm not the specialist in this topic, but there's no doubt that actually among people, and it's not a secret, among people, especially Ukrainian oligarchs who are absolutely invested in this bloodshed, there are many Jewish people, including, of course, Mr. Kolomoisky, who is, so, I mean, there's no secret. Most of, including from Poroshenko, most Ukrainian oligarchs and their current president are Jews. So, and Mr. Zelensky, whatever his circumstances, he certainly is not, burdened by the issues of Holocaust or whatever. He's fully, Nazi controlled, and I don't know, maybe he is already Nazi, maybe he converted, I don't know. But the fact that he is a Jew by no means precludes Ukrainian regime to be a de facto Nazi regime. So there you go. That was
I
the
always
answer.
thought that Kolomoisky organized the Azovs and all the other.
Oh yeah, no doubt. It's not.
But what I'm saying is that Kolomoisky is Jewish, but I think that he figured, muscle is muscle. It doesn't matter if they're neo-Nazis or whatever. They will break some skulls, and that's what I want. And I think that was his rationale.
Well, maybe he is, but he also, do not forget the factor of the absolutely hysterical Russophobia there, and all means are good for that matter. So there you go. That's probably what was in Lavrov's words. But then again, I'm not Lavrov. I don't know him personally, but I know he's one of the, if not the best diplomat in the world. And when he says anything, it usually has an effect, and he says it on purpose.
Yeah.
All right. No Sense says, is Western Ukraine an area where Russian forces risk becoming overextended, including terrain, local hostility, distance from logistic bases?
Oh, there is a chance for that, no doubt about it. It would be absolutely incorrect to state that there is no probability of this happening. So, but then again, warfare is probabilistic affair. And that is why general staffs, real serious general staffs, they operate on the criteria of effectiveness, which are probabilities of this or another event, or on this or another action happening. So could it be the case? Absolutely, it could be. Is it possible? Absolutely possible. How probable it is? I don't know. That probably is probable, but what is the probability of Russia getting overextended if Russia decides to go into Western Ukraine? I'm pretty sure the people who would plan that, they will know what they are doing. So that's what it is.
From Toilet Sauce, Western propagandists keep talking about a Russian schedule. Does a modern army even bother with such a schedule? Does it make any real difference if victory is won in 3 months versus 9 months or a year?
There are obviously some norms which are called normatives, which are staff normatives, including general staff especially. For example, you have to take the city of, let's say, like Mariupol, 500,000 population. There are lower and higher time limits on how you can do it without losing, for example, operational tempo, and depending on what kind of force you actually assign to it. So there are that type of schedule. But in terms of operation, and especially military political planning, that's what general staffs do in conjunction with the political leadership, is there is obviously some time frame, very general, but do not forget that obviously we are talking about stochastic affair. Stochastic meaning having what? Random variables being thrown into the operations all the time. So they do deviate from the original, timetables, and, the staffs plan accordingly, especially in terms of logistics, supplies, and things of this nature. So, so in this particular case, as I already stated, there's probably some time frame. It's kind of flexible, but there is time frame. Let's say, we have to deal with this by that, and then we'll go from there, and the new, so to speak, chain of the possibilities opens. As Putin, I believe, or Shoigu yesterday stated, if not Lavrov himself, actually, he stated there will be no, special occasions to capture something else for the May 9th, like it was during the, Great Patriotic War, when they had like, we have the date of, the November 7th of revolution, or Russians start their Bagration operation on the exactly 3rd anniversary of the Operation Barbarossa, the 22nd June 1944. I don't think so that's the case with the modern Russian operation.
Well, yeah, I've noticed that a lot of commentators on the West keep insisting that the date, the May 8th date, May 8th or 9th, I always forget, is going to be that Russia has to do something by that date. But that's an American mentality. It doesn't strike me as a Russian mentality.
No, the issue is that they still think that they're dealing with the USSR. And they had some, at that time, ideas about USSR. Most of them, not all, but most, they have no clue about modern Russia. And I mean literally, all those CIA people, whatever, it's laughable. I mean, they are absolute ignoramuses on that issue, and it's like, oh my gosh, And again, take Rebecca Koffler. I read some what she wrote. It's ridiculous. If those people are part of the National Security Agency and they consult about Russian strategic culture, there's no surprise then everything is falling apart. So there you go.
All right, from Wayne, how does the weakest German government since Bismarck recover from the incompetence of Schultz marionette show?
Alexander should answer this one.
Yeah, oh gosh. First, I don't think so Germany is going to recover.
I don't think so either.
First, it's like Germany's economy to start with was basically a balloon, which was basically inflated all the time, because Germany, with its energy costs, and they were like for many years. Let's not put everything on Scholz, however incompetent his government is. Do not forget, and I am on the record, and I'm sorry for my many wonderful German friends, and some of them I remember, from the times when they were also in my Naval Academy, and people of the 4th Flotilla in Rostock and Warnemünde, they're wonderful German people. I can tell you that thing. Nation which elects for decades and makes it a viable force, political force, the Green Party, it had it coming for them, So I think so. The next thing they have to elect is Greta Thunberg. And, but Germany is not going to recover. You cannot recover with 49 cents per kilowatt hour for businesses and wait for, and selling overpriced or over-engineered, pardon me, trash like Mercedes-Benz, with dick enlargement cars, and think that, oh, we're so good. No, you're not that good anymore. Germany used to be good, but not the case anymore.
Right. Bill Krause says...
Can I just quickly say, I don't think this German government is going to last very long, but I think, and here I agree with Andrei and Gonzalo, I think the damage has been done. I think if you know the German industrial system, if you know the German economic system, it's been living on borrowed time anyway for a very long time. Germany has not been an innovative economy. It has been focused on doing the same things that it's always been doing, only doing them a little more precisely. And it is not up to date in latest technological developments and changes. And I think that what's going to happen is that the props that have kept the German industrial economy going are going to be knocked away from underneath it. And I think it's a descent from now on. I say that with deep sorrow. I like Germany a huge amount. I know the country, I like the people, but I think that an enormous amount of damage has been done in a very short time, which, given the underlying malaise, one and exacerbated by all those years of Merkelism, it's going to be impossible to pull round in any foreseeable time frame. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I'm roughly a third German. My maternal grandmother was German-Danish, and another grandmother was half German. And I lived in Germany. That's where I met my wife, actually. And I have enormous affection for Germany, but it just seems like, quite frankly, it seems like a dying nation. And that's what it looks like to me, and it just breaks my heart, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, and Bundesliga will never be better than English Premier League. For all my love for Borussia Dortmund, I mean, huge number of Russians were rooting for Borussia Dortmund because of the Jurgen Klopp. Now Jurgen Klopp obviously is training Liverpool, and guess what? And Russians always like Liverpool, But other than that, yeah, I agree. It's such a tragedy. But again, it's not just Scholz when it started. It was before him. He's just merely the symptom, not the cause.
Yeah.
From Bill, are the Russians rotating troops through the Ukraine operation
Yeah,
in order to produce?
Absolutely.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry. I interrupted you, Alex.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
Bill. Okay. Okay. Are Russians rotating troops through the Ukraine operation in order to produce more with battle experience?
Absolutely. And it's not just battle experience, it's also obviously to give people rest, so they rotate it and to keep the troops fresh. Absolutely. The same was happening in Syria.
From Steve-O, Andrei, how great will the memory of Putin be to Russians in the future compared to other former great Russian leaders?
Probably within the same realm as Peter the Great, Catherine the Great, Stalin, and Putin. That's how this man will be remembered in Russian history.
Yeah.
From T. Clem, aren't oligarchs becoming more patriotic to build Russia's recovery?
Gosh, first, there are oligarchs and there are oligarchs, okay? Many people do not understand that oligarchy now in Russia, merely they mutated into, some of them have been moved to London, and some of them killed in London or robbed in London, which is good riddance. That's what the other morons in Western media don't understand. They think, oh, they took his yacht. They don't understand. Russia applauds it. Please do more. Take everything from them.
Obviously.
Yeah, it's like the bunch imbeciles do not even understand what they're talking about. But point is, Russia and state of Russia practically controls most of Russia's strategic industries, either directly or through their LLCs and old stockholders and things of this nature. So there are times of 90s when there you had those, robber barons, who control the whole industries, is gone. It's absolutely not there anymore. So there are many rich people in Russia, make no mistakes. And there are many very rich people. But just to give you an example, one moron, Tinkov, who, by the way, Russian Premier League also carries his name and the name of his bank, he stated something against Russians a couple of weeks ago. Guess what? His bank now tries to change its title from Tinkov Bank to something else because people started just closing accounts and said, go screw yourself, So that's what it is. So yeah, there are rich people, but there is no oligarchy in Russia because the real power rests with the technocrats and what is called siloviki, which is, of course, power block, which is, of course, military intelligence complex. And those people are, first, they are extremely educated. They are extremely educated. When you look at that, it's just, I never remember in my memory the government to be so competent and so absolutely stunning in the spectrum of the competences. And if you look at even Mikhail Mishustin or Yuri Borisov, or Manturov, I mean, it's the government. These people are monsters of their, engineering, science, economy, and things like that. Mr. Belousov, basically the main brain behind Russian economic reforms, So, and this is just to name a few. So, and oligarchs, they don't have access to Kremlin anymore. They can come and, petition oh yeah, can you do this on that? They are nobody's really.
All right, let's take a few more. Andrei, a few more. Balke says, what role does ECM play at the lower level in the field, for instance, in downing drones? And does this include very short? Yes.
Oh, Alex, you broke up.
No? What role does ECM play at the lower level in the field, for instance, in drowning drones? And does this include very short GPS jamming?
Yeah, I'm positive it is the case. I'm positive the case. And Russia was into those electronic guns and drone control technologies for a long time. Don't forget, Iran also landed 7 years ago, one of the most advanced American drones using the Russian electronic countermeasure system. So yeah, absolutely. And I'm absolutely positive that GPS jamming does take the place. So yeah, I'm positive.
All right. From Sanjeva says, what do you think about Kazakhstan? I heard that the pro-Western elements have again come to places of power there. Will it abandon Russia?
Yes, eventually it will. Eventually it will. While Mr. Tokayev can say whatever he wants, and you cannot basically change the fact that once the Kazakh nationalism has been unleashed, that inevitably it will come down to the point of not good things happening in Kazakhstan. Plus, there is a China, standing ready, to get into Kazakhstan. It's already there in a big way. So, yeah, I don't believe Kazakhstan elites, and yeah, it just.
Andrei, I wanted to ask you that we ought to do another program, not now, to cover the issue of the relationship between Russia and China, because I'm realizing that my understanding of that relationship is simplistic. I think that they're very close and very allied, but there are obviously a lot of nuances to it.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of nuances.
Yeah, exactly. Because, like, for instance, what was the outfit? Union Pay. Union Pay is a Chinese outfit, and they decided not to go into Russia, and so that sort of like struck me like, oh, I thought that they were best buddies, and so it's not quite that simple. And so I think
no, it's absolutely not simple. The same as the clan war, basically, which is ongoing right now in China too. And I'm not specialist in China. I'm definitely not sinologist. So I cannot necessarily provide good advice or good comments on China. But there is no doubt that Chinese political elite is homogeneous. It's not, and but yeah, there are nuances. What can I say? But China, how to say it? Somebody used this very good expression. China and Russia do not stand shoulder to shoulder. They stand back to back. And that is a little bit different,
Yeah,
so,
that's very interesting. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. We'll have to do a show about that, because that's something.
Yeah.
All right. And the final question, the final one for Andrei, is there a danger? This is from Akhnaf. Is there a danger of MAD being mentally tossed out amongst the ruling elite due to current mass psychosis? The human mind is easily deluded into fantasies of grandeur. Just ask Carolus, Napoleon, and Hitler.
There is a possibility, of course, of it. And again, you see, there should be a clear separation, distinction. There is a possibility. Is it possible? Yes. How probable it is, that's a whole other story. Classic law of probability says that probability of the event is usually the product of the probabilities of number of the events constituting this event. So it's P1 times P2 times P3 times P whatever, So many things has to happen with certain probability to give us probability of it. But is it possible? Absolutely. Is it probable? Not a high probability, but it's definitely not trivial. But I won't call it also high. Let me put it this way, as much as but yes, the concern should be there. Yes, it's mass psychosis. But even the last movement, so to speak, in terms of media rhetoric, this mini-true things, in terms of changing here and there, testify to the fact that somebody begins to kind of scratch their head there on the very top and prepare public to basically inevitable, so to speak. Even the fact that today State Department issued or whatever finance, Treasury issued again their license to some other bank, to do their buying of Russian oil and things like that. And as I said, evidently they figured out that basically they're going to kill the whole Western civilization if they continue to sanction Russia. So hey, that's good. Somebody begins to think, hey. It's positive moment. So I hope so. The same relates to and I'm pretty sure there are many competent people in Pentagon and who still didn't lose their honor and competence and professionalism, who can soberly assess the whole situation, say we're not going to be the part of it.
Well, the problem is that a lot of times these very competent people who are trying to put up roadblocks to this insanity get overrun. I mean, in my own case, I brought on to the Duran. I didn't bring on to them, but rather I mentioned to the Duran. I know a couple of people at the Federal Reserve. Well, one's no longer there, but has a lot of contacts. Anyway, the point is both of them were telling me how everybody at the Federal Reserve, prior to the crisis, was going around Washington everywhere, all of the economists of the Federal Reserve, with one message: do not disconnect Russia from SWIFT. It will be a catastrophe for the American economy and the European economy. They were adamant about this, and yet the Treasury Department and the Biden administration overran them. And that's the fear, that wise counsel will be ignored by these crazy people. That's the great fear.
Well, yeah, but economy is a little bit different. War, again, even the probably people with IQ below room temperature in DC, they still can picture the what's going to happen when three 1 megaton munitions will explode around Washington DC and Arlington. So don't forget, Pentagon still has it. They I know restored this hot dog stand diner. I think so. It was diner, then it was hot dog stand, then coffee shop, then again diner in Pentagon, in the very center of the Pentagon. It's called Ground Zero. The reason it is called Ground Zero is because they know the first thing which is going to happen, there will be one of the Russian warheads landing there. So, and that's not going to end good for very many people. So even those should understand that. And again, hysteria, which I see right now, is probably the first sign of the fact of their, basically impotence and, dawning understanding that how badly they are losing.
Right. Well, gentlemen, I think we will leave it there. There is one final question, which a lot of people are asking, Andrei, which if you can answer very quickly. And that is, what do you say to people when they tell you Russia is going too slow with regards to this military operation? What's your response to that?
Yeah, well, I would say, I do tell them. I tell them to get themselves into their, if they can go to enroll and try to get into the West Point and then U.S. Army War College, so to understand why it is done this way. Maybe then they will understand. Other than that, I mean, their expectations are not Russia's general staff problems. That's what it is.
Yeah, I think that the narrative goes faster than the tanks do.
Oh gosh, that's the only thing they know how to do. It's narrative. They never fought a war. They never created anything. They never wrote anything talented. So, I mean, yeah, those people are just PR people. That's what they do. PR, virtual reality, so.
Fantastic. All right. That was a great live stream, everybody. Gonzalo Lira's information, his Twitter and his YouTube channel, his new YouTube channel is in the description box down below. And Andrei's blog and his YouTube channel is in the description box down below. I will put everything as a pinned comment as well when this stream wraps up. So please join them, subscribe to their channels, follow them, follow Andrei's blog, follow Andrei's YouTube channel. Gonzalo has a great Twitter feed, which everyone should follow. And his new YouTube channel already has like 4 or 5 videos going. So definitely jump on that as well. Gentlemen, let's end this live stream. I leave it with the 3 of you for final comments, and then we are done. Alexander, Gonzalo, Andrei, any final comments? Who wants to go first? And we'll wrap up this stream. And thank you to our moderators. Thank you very, very much to our moderators for helping us out. Final thoughts as we wrap it up.
Well, I'm sorry, Alexander. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Andrei. You go ahead.
Okay, guys, I have to go really now. But what I want to say, thank you for having me. I'm really happy that Gonzalo, alive and well. Thank God. Let him stay this way. And Alex and Alexander, it's pleasure knowing you. And so, yeah, I defer to you and refer to you quite often. So thank you for having me, guys. And I gotta run, guys. So if you forgive me, let me end the stream now. I have some business to attend.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrei. Take care.
Talk to you later, guys. It was a pleasure.
Let me go so Alexander can have the final word. I just want to thank Andrei for very graciously coming on, and I want to thank you both, gentlemen, Alex and Alexander, for hosting this and just as I said before, just being so supportive of me and my current situation that I will never be able to thank you enough. And chat, I hope that you all enjoyed the show, because I certainly had a lot of fun, and I hope that Alex and Alexander did the same.
Absolutely. And can I just say, Gonzalo, thank you also for arranging for this. And of course, Andrei has been brilliant. And so have you, if I may say you. It's been a stimulating and amazing discussion. And can I also say it's really useful, I think. It's not useful, it's essential that, given that we're talking about a war which involves Russia and the Russian military, that we have somebody who's written actual knowledge and whose background originates from it, because everything else that we read, even from people here, even from people, you know, that we have huge respect for, they come to this from outside, whereas Andrei has it from the inside. He was there, he was in the military, he served in the Russian military, he knows how it thinks, he knows how it works, and of course we've learned so much from him. And of course he's also learned what they think about us, and it's not very flattering, it must be said.
Yeah, you know, what I really liked about Andrei's perspective is precisely that, the insider perspective. And I have no doubt that with all of his family contacts and his colleagues in the Russian Navy, that he must be extremely well informed, and that is just such a pleasure. By the way, I just wanted to mention something that if you guys are interested in this, I'm arranging to have an expert on the gas pipeline situation to give us a précis on the whole Russian pipeline situation insofar as Europe is concerned and China. Because something that has been coming up, of course, as well, the whole pipeline situation, and whether with the Power of Siberia pipeline, maybe the Russians will wind up selling their entire inventory to China and Asia, and they will no longer have gas to sell to Europe, you know? And so I'm thinking that, you know, it's something I'm looking into. And if I manage to pin these experts down, if you guys would be interested in having them on for a special show about this issue.
You're muted, Alexander. Yes.
Can I tell you? Absolutely. It's a very, very fascinating subject. By the way, I think what you've just described is probably the future. And I think it's been coming for a long, long time. I think that, in fact, the Russians made a decision way back in 2014 that they were going to start scaling down their sales of gas to Europe. And then Angela Merkel came along and talked Putin into going for Nord Stream 2. And I think the Russians have regretted it ever since. And I think they're going to press ahead with their plans. But certainly it's a hugely important topic. And, you know, certainly it's one which we can talk about with an expert soon. So let's stay in touch and let's discuss these things and see where we're going.
Okay. So anyway, thanks very much. And I will catch you guys later.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. And to all the people that sent questions, we will answer them in a separate show. We're not going to leave a question unanswered. So just keep that in mind. Whatever questions we couldn't get to, we will answer them in a dedicated show. Gonzalo, Lira, everybody, and Alexander Mercurs, thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for tuning into this live stream. And thank you to Andrei. Thank you very much, Andrei. Take care.